Hey everybody, welcome back to the More Memories Creative Workshop. I'm your host, William Xavier, and continuing on with our Caribbean Adventure scrapbook. And we're in Cozumel, Mexico now. And Cozumel is a little island off the coast of Mexico at the Yucatan Peninsula, a bit southeast from Cancun. And that was our last port of call on the trip. So I have a few of my photos here, and actually I did an insert that I'll show in a little bit as well. And we did not do an excursion on this port of call. We just got off the boat and walked around and just enjoyed just some of the scenery and had lunch at a taqueria that had some authentic dancing troupe that came and performed a bit. So I've got a couple pictures of that. And I'm actually going to do something a little different with ripping the paper this time. I'm actually going to use our custom cutting system templates to help rip the paper instead of a tearing tool or the ruler that I've been using throughout the series. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. And I got my papers here from Tropic Time Designer Tone on Tone. That's the word I'm looking for, the Tone on Tone pack. Here's my samples that I worked on to make sure it would work, what I wanted to do. And then here's the final finished pages that last video we did the inking on. So I went ahead and finished that up and added those music notes to both sides. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a ripped circle, scalloped ripped circle. And this is just scrap paper for right now that I used to figure out, how to, would this work? And then again, kind of some placement ideas. So essentially I'm going to have a larger scalloped circle with a smaller one inside. And I'm going to, of course, split this pretty much in half and find, where to pull over to the other side so that it doesn't cover my inking. So I'm probably going to have to trim off at the top. I could make two big circles if I wanted to and just cut here, and the same here. I just think that might look a little odd versus the one cut in half and split in a way. So that's what we're going to work on today. Get all this out of the way. So the first piece to do is to get yourself a piece of scrap paper or a piece of scrap cardstock. You're going to need the full 12 by 12 size, so maybe it might be a color that you're not particularly fond of, that you don't mind using this to make a big circle template for yourself, or just a piece of scrap paper that from a pack that you're not going to use because you don't like it. And what you're going to do is you're going to get your jumbo circle template, custom cutting template. Okay. And what you're going to do is you're going to use your blue blade on the outside track and cut out the largest circle that you can with this template, which is the blue blade outside track, to give yourself this giant circle. Okay. After that, right, since I'm using two, and I believe I'm going to go with the turquoise as the base and this kind of peachy pink as the inside. So what I'm going to do then is, and I can do this, either way. I can, I'm going to get a pencil. I'm going to trace the circle. So I could do it right on this sheet and then erase any pencil marks that I might have. I can flip it around and, do that side. Trace my circle on the opposite side if it's easier to see for you. Either way will work. I think I'm just going to come back around here. Just because I think I want the ripped edges to be a certain way. And you're just going to trace that circle. Oops. All the way around. And since this is just a thin piece of paper, that's why I'm kind of going around with my fingers just to make sure the paper doesn't push up on me. If you're using a thicker piece of cardstock, you might not need to do that. But if you're using a thin piece of paper, you might find you just need to hold it in place all the way around the edges. I got a nice pencil line all the way around. I think, it didn't really come over on this side for some reason. Retrace that. Oops. Better. Okay. Now I'm going to take my jumbo circle, scallop circle, right? And what I'm going to do, right, is I'm going to align these scallops around that pencil line, right? And you can see, right, it comes off here. But as I'm tearing, I'm actually going to be moving my jumbo scallop here around to get that bigger circle. Right? Since I'm ripping and I'm not using my blades. So, of course, if you're not into the ripping part, right, you can certainly use your blades. This would work the same way. You would just do your blue blade on the outside track, and then on the other paper you would just use the red blade on the outside track, and it will give you the same effect. But since I'm wanting to rip my paper, right, so I'm going to move my template, right? You can see the pencil line here. I'm going to move my template so that it's pretty much, the scallops are just crusting over that pencil mark on the side here. And I'm going to start my rip. If I can find my tweezers. Those were handy when I was practicing this. Don't know where they disappeared to now. I'm always losing them. And then I sit here and I cry. Oh, there's somewhere. I know there's somewhere. These are really helpful for this part. Aha. They were hiding. They were hiding underneath. Okay. All right. So once again, I'm placing the jumbo scallop template just cresting over the pencil line on one side. And then I'm just going to get my tweezer underneath here and just kind of get a rip going here. That's what I want. And then I'm just going to use this kind of similarly to the tearing tool or the ruler. I'm going to be pulling my paper up and, since I'm starting from the left, I'm going left to right. If you are starting or using your right hand to rip, right, you're going to lift up with your right and go over to your left. So because I'm left-handed here, I'm going to go left to right, and it's the same principle of all the other kind of times I've torn. And I'm just going to pull up, and I'm going to try to make sure I get right into that scallop, right? And I'm using more of a pinching technique here where I'm getting my finger into that groove of the scallop to pinch and pull up against the tearing tool. And as I go along, I'm just going to shift my tearing tool so that the crest of that scallop comes over that pencil line. So I'm just going to keep doing that. All the way around. And I'm probably going to have to do this like this in kind of chunks or corners, just because. And I'm rotating the mat because it's easier than trying to kind of get all around. I'm just going to keep rotating so I'm always ripping and tearing from the left to the right for myself. I'm going to clean this one up a little bit in here. I'm going to check my template. I need to position it a little bit more. There we go. And start my tear again. And I'm going to keep that pinching motion, right? Keeping my first finger really pulling, along the side of that scallop and pinching that paper up to my thumb. I'm going to position my scallop again. And now I'm just going to rotate. Oops, I shifted a bit. That's okay. I had to get my template repositioned anyway. I'm going to use my tweezers for this skinny part here. So you might need, some type of tweezer tool or just a pair of tweezers to help kind of get into some of that thin space there. Position my scallop again. I should be ready to go. Rotate and realign. And I'm just holding down this template, not with any great force, but just enough to make sure that I'm able to rip the paper against it to get that tear. So just like a tearing tool or a ruler to get a straight edge tear. Same concept. I'm just gonna move so I don't have to rotate again for this little bit. Okay, so here we've got our ripped jumbo scallop circle. I'm going to check for any pencil lines that are still there. I'm just going to give those a quick erase. Okay, looking good. You might want to keep the scraps, perhaps. They might be a neat little way to use the corner scraps. Or if you want to pitch them, go ahead, toss them. I'm gonna get my rich cocoa ink. All right, I've been inking all along, and here's where I'm going to incorporate that effect here. I'm just gonna go along and ink these edges. Quick. Similar techniques that I've used in the other videos, right? You see I'm bringing the pad right to the paper, and I'm just kind of quickly running it across the edge, but I'm angling it so that I can get a little bit of that overlap onto the edges. That's just the effect that I'm aiming to have. So this is certainly a step you could skip if you don't want to, or you're still not feeling as confident with inks. It's just a large piece of paper, so it's a little cumbersome in certain spots, but that's okay. You know, and you don't have to use the rich cocoa ink. You could use the teal ink. You could use a blue ink. You could use black if you're really wanting a really bold line. Trying to get some of that ink to come off away from the edge there. So you don't have to use. You could if you wanted a lighter brown, the Toffee Crunch Memento ink would probably work well too. Do a couple touch-ups. Okay. I think that primarily looks how I want it. I'm gonna set this one aside. I'm going to get my other paper that has disappeared on me for some reason. Oh, there it is. Found it. And I'm gonna do the same thing, but it's gonna be a bit easier because I don't have to move this template as I go around, because I want just the size of the outer ring. Right? Comparable to if I used the red blade on the outside, so that I can get that smaller one to go on the inside of the bigger one. So all I gotta do is place it here in the middle, you know, or if you wanted to kind of, for some reason, have an offset one, you could do that too. I'm gonna come right in the middle, and similar to the other one we just did, I'm just gonna make my starting point rip, and I'm just gonna do that same technique of pinching and pulling to the opposite direction, making sure I can get into these scallop grooves with my finger. I'm going to rotate because it's easier to do that. again. Just better be careful if you shift, just realign. Okay. And again, you've got, a scrapbook, a frame, which, yeah, you had to kind of get in there and rip, but you could always, paper weld that, or, find something that might go over it. If you want to keep that whole scrap as a frame, you could. And here I've got my inside smaller one that will go together. I'm going to ink the sides of this one now, real quick. And again, this is a step you can skip. You don't have to do it. If you're not wanting the rich cocoa, obviously black would, of course, give you a similar bold line. Maybe you're using this with other colored papers. You could maybe do a lighter green. Might be neat if you're using greens or yellows. I'm trying to think of some other colors. We don't really have a peach one. The angel pink might work here. I think it kind of just depends on, what paper colors you're using, what's kind of the feel that you're wanting for everything. And since I've kind of consistently pulled this type of theme throughout the whole album, I want to keep that. You're using the rich cocoa and kind of giving the paper a bit of an antiqued type of look on the edges. I'm just getting a little bit more around the edges. Okay, that should be good. The other piece that you might want to consider, right, is, if you're wanting to conserve paper as well, you can certainly go back to your large scallop rip, and you could take your jumbo circle and you could cut out the middle. I probably use, if you're wanting to conserve, more paper, the red blade, and that will give you that will give you enough to place your, your inside circle. That'd be enough room with adhesive. If you're kind of worried, you can always make that a little bit bigger by using a green blade or the blue blade on the inside, to make sure that you have enough to adhere to. So I might do that with this. I think I will. Right, so I'm going to use the blue blade. I just kind of want to make sure I have a large enough area, even though I know if I use red it would be fine. But I'm going to use the blue blade on the inside track. Okay. And now I've got another circle I can use either side. And that will, some extra scrap for myself. Okay. Then, right, I'm going to add some adhesive along here. And then I'm going to place, the way it best would look. Right, so if I'm wanting it to really kind of be in line as much with the scallop as possible, right, I'm just going to find where it looks the best and go with that. If I kind of want to offset the scallop, I'm just going to turn it around, just going to go with kind of what might look the best to me. And even though there's a little bit of a pattern in there, I'm taking that into account a bit as well. I'm thinking here might be good. Okay. Because I am going to be splitting this in half. And that's another decision to make as well. Do I want to rip this in half? Do I just want to use my trimmer and cut? So I might go with a rip. So lining this up as best I can here. To be in the middle. 6-inch mark. And so I'm just going to, I got to be careful because I've got that that ring that I cut out on the back side here. So I don't want to rip that or damage that in any way. So I'm just going to be a little careful with how I'm scoring this on the underside here. And I'm just going to lift and tear like I've done before. And I'm going very carefully because it's a big piece of paper. It's hard to really get in there to do the pinching. So that's why I'm going very slow with pulling from the side. I'm coming up and over as much as I can. And I'm just doing a little bit at a time till I can get back to doing the pinching with my fingers. Especially when you've got the two papers overlapping, it's a little harder. You have to use a little bit more force to pinch and rip. Okay. I'm going to ink these sides real quick. You know, again, another step you don't have to do if you're not wanting to or still trying to get comfortable with inking. I'm just trying to get a little bit more to come away from that edge. You know, and another technique that I kind of figured out one day. I'll move my camera a bit here. You can see the edge right where I place my cutting mat a little bit past the edge of my table. And then I do the same with the paper with the side that I'm going to try to ink just a little bit over the edge of the cutting mat. Hold it in place, and then I can use my ink pad to come along the side. In a similar way. That might be one technique that might help. If trying to hold the paper and ink gets a little flimsy, you can try that. All right, so I got my two pieces. I'm gonna get my pages. Okay. Which one's which? This one's this one's that one. Okay. And I know I'm going to have kind of an off, right, centered circle, right, because of the design here and here. But I can play around too, right? I could, maybe I want it to come, you know, from the top and the bottom. I could do that too. And kind of check out the photos I have. Will that work a little bit better? And I'm just kind of roughly dry fitting things right now. To kind of see how I might work with that. I might do that. I might do what I was going to. And come in at the edge here. And kind of see, do I like that idea? Of course, I'm going to map my photos, so I'm going to have to, factor that in as well. Maybe I do something like that. And then the other side. This idea. And of course I would be, trimming this off. Actually, this one, I might be able to almost fit the whole thing there, which is nice. So I might do something like that, which would give me still some room to do some, a little journaling right on the page, which I've been doing, as we've gone along. So I like that idea, being able to keep that going. I might need to trim my photos a little bit more to create a little bit more space for everything with the mats. But as a whole, I have a couple of options to think about. So that's what I'll be doing next, is thinking about that, matting my photos and getting them all together on the pages. And I will then share these finished pages with you all. But I also said I would toss this in as well. So I had some extra pictures from Cozumel, right? We walked around a bit. We saw some of the interesting local places, as well as, we came upon a church at one of the street corners, and we just kind of walked in to check it out. So similar to what I did in Jamaica, right? I'm going to have a multi-pocket page insert here with some of those photos as well, walking around Puerto Maya and out into the city, or town, I should say. And then here's that church that we saw and just walked in. And because here they had a placard about the church, both in English and in Spanish. And since I couldn't decide which one I wanted, I added both, and I just put one with a tab on it, right, en Español, to just kind of pull out, so it doesn't get caught by the pocket, to check out as well. And I can slide back in. So these will be my Cozumel pages, and I will get these all set and share them all with you on my Facebook, More Memories Scrapbooking, for you all to see, as well as in the Creative Workshop Facebook group. So you can check out the finished ones there shortly. So I hope this was inspirational and helpful for you. And if you need anything, feel free to reach out to me, to your favorite advisor. We're always happy to help and assist any which way we can. And as always, be safe, be well, happy scrapping, and looking forward to the next video where I'm going to be outlining some of the history of our favorite topic, pirates and rum. So I have an interesting idea brewing, and I'll be putting that together to highlight and showcase in the next video. So again, Hope you enjoyed, and if you need anything, feel free to reach out, and be safe, be well, and happy scrapping. Thanks for joining. See you next time.